I have been given 100 days to save the creatures of Astreaos by beheading the evil Medusa and blinding the brutal Cyclops. However, at random times, waves of monsters will swarm the islands, holding us back and attempting to put a stop to our mission. Within this time frame, I must protect the wildlife from the hordes, fight through caves to gather all the artifacts, and breed dinosaurs strong enough to take down the evil demigods. But before then, we have been transported to the beach to prove our worth, working from nothing and needing to set up our defences as early as possible. So sit back and get ready for this epic tale on how I attempted to save Astreaos in just 100 days.
Awoken, naked on the beach, I had no time to waste as I began harvesting materials, building up the basic tools towards the old battlegrounds, which would give me a big head start acquiring tools left over. However, I was not aware of what was to come. After several hatcheted dodos and a near miss with a lurking raptor that mysteriously disappeared, the forts were now in sight, and what I believed to be the easy part was within my grasp. I rummaged through the old boxes, finding metal pickaxes, hatchets, and even some crossbows, but instead of taking the easy option of settling down where I was, I got too greedy and attempted to check out the rival fort. On the way there, I spied a moss chops that just wanted some tinto berries, and soon I was riding around on them, collecting fibre and berries to survive. But this enjoyment did not last long, and from here, things went terribly wrong. Getting inside the fort, I got distracted by a running iguanodon, leaving me in a sticky situation as raptors began to swarm me, sending me straight back to the beach with no resources and miles away, with only the memory of my moss chops left. As the sun was slowly setting and the temperature dropping, I had to stock myself back up with resources and finally getting dressed as we pushed forward to the fort once again. Throughout the night, I became the raptor's play toy as I attempted using bowlers and spears, but to no avail, constantly making runs back to where I was hoping to hunker down. Me! Finally, on day 2, things began to go my way, as I was able to start picking them off one by one, until a Troodon decided to join in the fight. Now, although I was put to sleep, I was able to come out on top, eventually having a place that we could defend against. I began laying down some of the foundations, attempting to fortify the area, and whilst doing so, I came across one of the raptor's younglings. But I did need some help here, so I claimed them in the hopes of defending against the next attack. I spent the rest of the day building up our starting base, wanting to move in the future. However, for now, we had to get prepared to face off against the onslaught of enemies I was going to have to contend with. Whilst I carried on with the build, on day 3, I came across a wild saber-toothed juvenile, which, for now, I wasn't going to be picky with what I had at my base to protect me, and so we brought them back as we had created our fort that is the start of the journey of facing off against Medusa and the Cyclops, before heading out for the rest of the day on a hunt for resources, whilst riding around on our raptor, gathering all the meat and hide that I could. Day 4 began with me placing down a smithy and preparing to make as many narcotics as possible, and I was finally starting to craft some tranquilizing arrows in the hopes of building up a raptor army to face off against the upcoming hordes. These were going to have to be strong enough to take on the first wave of creatures, and not knowing what day they may appear or what creatures to expect, breeding them up as quickly as possible was going to be the safest option. After taking on some lower levels whilst finding nothing else all day, I decided on day 5 to tame any 2 I could to at least start breeding up anything to defend the base after the horror I encountered when I first arrived at the fort. including a parasol, in order to help harvest any berries. Once home, I began the mating, which led to my next issue. The eggs were unable to hatch due to the temperature, and so I had to wait. That was until I noticed an Astroraptor approaching, and so I had to act fast. Firing my crossbow, I sprinted away on the back of my raptor, leading it to a Triceratops, far enough away that we could be safe for now. And after more waiting around, on day 6, my raptors began hatching. And as they continued to grow up, I finally headed up into the hills to mine some metal and crystal. As for what I needed to get done in these 100 days, I was going to need to start harvesting as much as I could as soon as possible. Arriving back at base after a few trips back and forth, however, and another night falling, I crafted together a trough to help feed the babies I was breeding up, before placing down some torches to give some light to our fort. Now that I was able to see once night fell, something I was not expecting, however, was a level 135 Argentavis flying around nearby. And knowing this would be a huge help in the transporting of my new base once I was ready, as well as hoarding all of my resources around the map. And so, I took out my crossbow and one of the raptors in an attempt to tame this.
Come on, let's go. Yes. No way this is here. Oh, I missed it. Oh, maybe it's not running. Okay, I thought this was running. It has to be running now, surely. How did I miss? How did I miss again? How did I miss again? What? Ah, I got that one. And I missed again. Hit it again. Come on, please. Oh, come on. I missed it again. How? It's out. We got it. Let's go. Let's flip and go.
Throughout the rest of the night, I continued with the breeding, getting ready to hatch more in the morning, whilst gathering more meat. And as day 7 dawned, the hatchlings were growing up, followed by the Argentavis waking up as I filled the fort with raptors all over, feeling ready and finally able to attempt to tame a high level. Not only to take on the hordes, but also to get me through most of the caves that lie within the islands of Astreaos. While searching, I came across one of the greatest creatures I have ever seen and ridden within any of the ARKs, but for now, I had no idea what was in store, as my first ever Meguana lay in front of me. But after firing a tranquilizer into it, it flew off. So bewildered, I carried on spying 2 raptors, one of which was exactly what I was looking for. Throwing my bowler at both, I quickly took out the weakest. However, the one I was hoping to tame escaped, heading straight towards a trike, and so I had to act fast as both my raptor and the high-level wild raptor took it down together, giving me a chance to bowler it and knock it out. And soon enough, they were tamed up, as we now had something to work on for the breeding and any mutations I could get. When I arrived back, it appeared it was just on its last legs, and upon looking inside its inventory, I spied their Xeno claws, meaning they were just able to take out a tickle chicken all on their own. Once back at the fort though, I continued to breed up my raptors, hoping now for a breeding pair, as I could already start on raising not only a strong base defense, but as I mentioned before, the caving creatures I was going to need to retrieve all of the artifacts. As the base continued to fill up with raptors, I was in dire need of meat to prevent them from starving, and so I was forced to spend the rest of the day collecting meat for the new babies. As day 8 began, I built up some dino gates for the fort to prevent anything coming in from either side, as I still wasn't ready to take on the challenge of building my full base, as more and more eggs were being laid, but still, no breeding pair, as I spent more time gathering berries on our parasaur. As night fell on what felt like an unproductive day with no results, I spent the rest of my time mining as much metal as I could in order to be ready for the next day. But finally, on day 9, a high-level male was born, and so I left with a breeding pair ready to finally create an army of raptors that were strong enough to withstand all I needed for now. As they were growing up, I continued to collect meat. However, something I was not expecting to see was an ovis with not 1, but 3 female babies that I could keep until mutton was needed later on, for larger tames. And so, I continued on throughout the rest of the day, searching for more ovis and any meat I could find for my raptor army, as they were going through so much food. Before the end of the day, the raptors were grown up, and so I took them out, feeling much safer to venture the lands and explore whilst knowing I was in a position that I could either take down or run from anything I encountered for now. However, I just gathered more metal and wood to take back to the fort before heading out the next day. I spent the next 2 days from day 10 to day 11 exploring more, collecting more resources and seeing what I may find. However, something I wasn't expecting to come across was a Rex with a child, and I can't say no to an easy baby Rex claim, and so I took them on rather easily, collecting our new tame and continuing on my adventure hoping to find a Meguana to tame. On the dawn of day 12, as I was still out and about, I spotted a Drakeling, something I had never seen on the Ark yet. However, the torch method of taming them wasn't working, and so I had to leave it alone and continue on my journey. Looking for drops, but also another baby Rex, or perhaps a Brachy or Therizino in order to start collecting eggs for when I needed to create lots of kibble, which was needed to tame some of the creatures I was going to need in order to take on Astreaos and the tyrants that had taken over it. After seeing enough of Corinthos, the island we started on, I decided to build up a raft and head on over to Fokintos.
What did he say?
An island I had never been to and had no idea what to expect, and so more exploring happened over the next couple of days, looking all around whilst finding nothing to help me out. And so on day 15, back on the mainland, I spied a high-level female Argentavis that I could use to breed with my other one, as well as help gather more materials with another flying caravan, and so I tamed them all. With my new RG and a new saddle to go along with it, I was now searching from the skies that felt firstly much safer, but also allowed me to see much more whilst travelling across the seas much easier and much faster. However, although it did feel faster, I had heard great things about the Meguana, and carrying around a trap on me in order to stop them from running away, I spent more time searching for them. Now, on the dawn of day 16, I finally spied a max level and knew I had to tame this one. So I prepared the trap, got my rare flowers ready in order to get them to chase me into it, and so came the time to test this out. But eventually, I got it all picked up and sorted, allowing me to start firing my tranks into their head, which led to me knocking them out quite easily, feeding them some of the mutton and starting to tame my first Meguana. However, nearby, I spied another one that could be used to breed with it. But with the first one tamed up, I was pretty happy to see these stats, mostly.
Goddamn!
Oh, 50 into food. Brilliant. But before the second had tamed up, a wild baby Pachyrhinosaurus walked up to me. And those that don't know me may not know that I love these little guys. And I wish I found them more at the start of each of my playthroughs. So I took mercy on them, picked them up, and decided to take them home. Arriving back home, I put a saddle on my Meguana, and although it may sound silly, I spent the rest of the day attempting to learn to fly, which seemed to be a little harder than I had once thought it would be. But on day 17, I crafted up some flak armor, completing my new look and ready to take on anything that came my way. Almost ready to build up my new base as I went out harvesting more materials, finding a new, very strong crossbow, and started to craft up foundations for the beginning of my new fortress. But before I could start making it, as night fell, a horde of serpents filled the lands, and so the defense had to begin as I took out my raptors, bred for this war, and charged headfirst into Medusa's minions. With all of them taken care of, as day 18 rose, I began the build of the new fortress with the hopes of protecting both me, my dinos, and everything I owned, which took me a few days just to build the walls. But once I had, after working through days and nights tirelessly, the surrounded walls had been completed on day 21, with entranceways and steps up to the top and a walkway along the walls. And it was now ready to build up the inside with storage and a nice home. But after a few more days, the house was built with all the furniture and a comfy home to stay at. A crop house to start growing up some crops was built. A breeding area for my boss fighting dinos, and a small shelter for my raptors, completing the fort for now as we went into the night on day 25. I got compost bins ready as I took out the Meguana in order to gather up the necessary seeds to plant, whilst also building a fabricator to craft up some generators to help keep some lights on to brighten our base, allowing me to work there easily during night or day. I spent the entirety of day 26 collecting all the drops I could find, gathering all kinds of armor, weapons, saddles, and resources to use later on, as I brought them all back home to put away for now. As night fell, I began to build up the needed machines and parts for breeding, as I had begun breeding up my Meguanas in the hopes of having an imprinted one, and spares just in case we lost any. But on day 27, we got incredibly lucky, as at the start of the day, we had a breeding pair ready to go, and a crazy looking blue mutation one, which looked incredible, but sadly for now, I wouldn't have the time to fully mutate these, as I needed to focus on many other things. With fertilizer now available, I took out my parasaur to collect any seeds we didn't have, and began planting all of my crops, as I would need my kibble ready before taming our next big dinosaur. But before the day ended, I took my raptors over in an attempt to take on the first cave of many. Come on, come on, come on. Don't you dare spit on me. Okay, are they following? Yes. Oh, good. But they are. Holy crap. Okay, this guy. Get him. Oh, can we not hold him down? Alright. I do not remember the way. Oh, crap. Again? Oh, right. Well, I'll do this bit then. On my own. Come on. I can't believe we haven't found it. Oh, I forgot about bats. There we go. And no rabies right now. I do see more bats though. Oh god. Don't give me rabies, please. No rabies yet? That's a good sign. Don't push me back. Please just leave me alone. Oh, I thought that was giving me rabies. Have you got rabies? No. Oh, now I've got rabies. Wonderful. Just kill this flipping... How is this still... Wait, what am I doing? Why is that doing 10 damage? Wonderful. Why did that not hit? What is going on? How is it still alive? Is there another one? Oh, there's another one. Wonderful. That's the 145 gone. Why is it not hitting? It's not hitting the flipping thing. Come on. It's dead. It's dead. It's dead. Of course this is a 150. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't we have a 150? Get that guy first. Oh my god, what is going on? Please, come on. Let's give this a go. Is this it? Is this the end? There's the Minotaurs. Come on, don't come to us yet. Just wait. Is that all of them? Yes. Right. Here we go. Attack. That's one down. Oh yeah, we got this easy. Holy crap. This is ridiculous. Okay, and artifact 1 taken. Ooh, right, cool. I can't believe he's destroyed all my stuff.
And with our first artifact in my hands, I headed back to the fortress in order to prepare for the next one, and everything else I still had to do. Now, with some of the crops fully grown, I crafted all I needed to start cooking up the kibble that was required for my next mission, as I felt things were going well and we would easily defeat the evil tyrants. But things would not go quite as well as I thought. But that's not for now, as we continue to press on, building up a fridge for all of the food we had. I continued working throughout the night at the base until day struck on day 28, as I headed on over to our next cave.
As if we got it already. Let's go. Let's go home, Meg. Out of this laggy cave. Ugh.
Now, what I didn't show there was just how long it took me to figure out the puzzle, as I got stuck trying to get to each of the 3 buttons. However, by the time I made it out, the sun was almost setting, and so I headed home to drop off my new artifact,
needing only one more to take on Medusa, but I wanted to retrieve all of them before facing off against both her and the Cyclops. But unexpectedly, as nighttime fell, Medusa sent not only her serpents, but arachnids too, that ventured the landscapes as I prepared my raptors once again to go to war.
Come on. God damn. They're coming out of the goddamn walls.
With them all taken care of and day 29 dawning, I got back and began crafting more and more kibble as we were getting closer to taming our larger dinos, ready to take on the rest of Astreaos. From here on out now, I was on a mission to find our boss dino army whilst taking on high level Astral Raptors until finally, on day 30, I spied a Spinosaurus, which was my chosen boss fighter, and so the taming process begun. But as it went down in the ocean, Zafactinus began shredding it to pieces, and so I had to continue hoping to find more high levels. Which eventually, in the same day, I was able to find another as I proceeded again to attempt to knock it down. But once it was down, the Velonosaur began firing, and so I had to take them down quickly before it affected its taming effectiveness. I flew back home in order to collect my kibble before bringing it back as I now waited for them to tame up. But now the big challenge was going to be to find another, hopefully with some better melee. And after 2 days, I was having no luck with the Spino front, no matter how much I flew around, and so I decided to take to the seas on day 33, as there were certain dinos I was going to need to take on the underwater caves, being both the Megalodon for pure power and the Archelon to protect me against any jellyfish or eels. At first, I thought I wasn't going to find any, but with a bit of luck and perseverance, there was a nice male Archelon that, after a few feeds, was tamed up. And the stats, I wasn't going to complain about, as well as a female with much greater stats. And so all that was needed now was Megalodons and a male Spino. But this search would not go quickly. After another day, day 34, I finally spied my first Meg that I was going to tame. And with the use of the speed of the Meguana and my strong crossbow, I was able to take them on fairly easily, along with some manta rays that wouldn't leave me alone. And after some time, it was finally knocked out. Once night had hit, I spied a perfect mate for my Megalodon that had now tamed up, but I needed to still collect. And so once again, I began to knock them out until feeding them and leaving them to tame up. Throughout the next 2 days, once again, I searched for a Spino so I could begin the process of breeding all of them up. However, on day 36, in the dead of the night while searching up in the north, I spied one of my new favourite pets in the ARKs, the Veilwyn. And so I tamed them up and decided to take out some more of my time to find its breeding partner, as they can really pack a punch. Not too long after, on day 37 though, another had shown itself, and so I tamed them also, while still hoping to find a higher level later on. The hunt for the Spino still continued over the next few days. And this took much longer than I expected, but eventually, after so much searching, on day 42, I had finally found what I was looking for, and with some luck, they got stuck, making the taming process so much easier. And so as they were taming up, I went back in the hopes of finding more high-level Veilwinds. Whilst doing so though, I followed some steps up to the top of a giant mountain known as Mount Olympus, which was stunning with a great view of the clouds, and after a quick look around, I headed back to collect my tamed up Spino to go back home and start the long breeding and mutation road ahead. Once back home, I checked through all the stats again on each of the dinos I was going to use, and with what I had, I believed I was ready to begin mating them all together, starting with the Veilwinds before positioning the Spinos ready to breed the army that was going to take on the bosses. Once they were all in place however, it was time to put the ocean creatures into where they were going to mate, and with that, I was going to need to build a new pen to protect them from any of the nearby creatures lurking in the area. Over the next couple of days, I spent working on the new pen, as I built up the house to contain the breeding machines, walls to prevent anything coming in, and something I was quite happy with, a small grate to allow the river to continue flowing out of the facility. So on day 46, we were ready to begin breeding of all of our dinos that I had worked so hard to get. After a few days of breeding, on day 49, I wanted to test out one of the new Spinos that was still way off being complete. However, with ease, I was able to take out most around us, including Astroraptors, without worrying about losing them. In between now and all of the breeding, I spent my time hunting for more drop, whilst keeping some Spinos to the side in order to have some kind of army ready for another surprise attack, whenever that may come. However, spying an Alpha Rex nearby on day 51, I had to go out and test out my new Veilwind, Godfrey. But as I continued on throughout the days, on the night of day 56, Minotaurs were sent down from the Cyclops, and so the Spino army gathered and headed out of the gates into what was a really tough battle. With some of the Spinos not making it, I knew I still had much more work to do, as on day 57 I pushed harder on the breeding whilst preparing myself for more caves. However, after some days, I felt my Archelon and Megalodons were ready, so on day 63 I took out a rather large sea army and headed over towards the first of the ocean caves, and as I drew closer, I knew there was no turning back. With the last of the Medusa artifacts collected, there were only 3 more to gather, and so I continued preparing all of my dinos in order to face off against anything that got in my way. And with a couple more days of breeding and my sea creatures ready to go out again, I decided to take on the other deep sea cave on day 65. After a lot of searching around though from getting lost several times, I came across the cave and made my way in. After taking way too long on yet another puzzle, I picked up all of my creatures, knowing I could simply swim out quickly on the back of my Maywing, before eventually making it back to base with yet another artifact, leaving just 2 more, and so I continued to breed more whilst I waited to decide on my next move. After some more days though of breeding and hatching eggs, I finally took to taking on another cave on day 69, preparing my raptors before running straight in there, which ended up being quite terrifying. With 1 more artifact down and 1 left to go, I was just made aware that this cave was not going to be as easy as the others and may require something even bigger than that of my Spinos, which I was not expecting. And so from day 70, I began hunting for a Carcharodontosaurus to tame up and take on the last and final cave. After days of searching, on day 74, I spied an area that was covered with gigas and carchers, and so I prepared some carcasses ready to feed them in the hopes of taming one easily, but these things never happen with ease. I continued to attempt this throughout the night, but as midnight struck on day 75, they finally took my food and allowed me to climb on the back of them, beginning to wreak havoc across Astreaos. As the sun dawned, finally they were tamed up, and I was able to attempt the cave. However, one thing that needed to happen first was going around and leveling them up to make sure that they were strong enough and ready. With plenty of astral dinosaurs around, this turned out to be much easier than expected, and before long, we were ready to take them to claim our final piece of the puzzle. I spent the next few days preparing with med brews and more leveling, as I had no idea what I was about to encounter within the cave, and losing the Carcharodontosaurus would set me back too far to complete my mission. But on day 79, after some more breeding, I headed over to the volcano island in the hopes of taking this on with my first attempt, and so I slowly entered, expecting the worst. And with the final artifact in my grasp, all that was left to do was to continue my breeding throughout the next few days, taking so long now to continue getting both the melee and health mutations. And with so much work done and so much time spent breeding, on day 94, our Spinos were ready with some of the most beautiful colours, as I took each one out in order to level them up, facing off against Astrals to gain those levels even quicker. Finally though, on day 98, after so much work gaining levels and breeding, it was now time to enter into the arenas, as our first destination was the lair of Medusa. With the first tyrant down and the Cyclops waiting for the challenge, I allowed for my Spinos to regain health, and so, on day 100, as the sun rose, the final battle was afoot, and I entered the hollow of the Cyclops, and the battle commenced. after 2 hard-fought battles and 100 days of preparing for war, Astreaos had been saved. But in the dead of the night, I headed back home, which to my surprise, looked like a battlefield. And as I was away, more Minotaurs had invaded. As the corpses of my Spinos and many other Minotaurs lay on the ground, with only one dinosaur left standing above the rest, my Carcharodontosaurus. Now, this 100 days video took me a couple of months to record and edit, along with all the literal terabytes of footage within it. However, it was one of the most fun challenges I have done to date. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and help push this video further, and subscribe so you don't miss any more of the content here. We will have our own free Ragnarok server for you all to join coming up this week or the next. All you have to do is join the Discord, and the server and passcode will be posted there, and it will be started up with a live stream as well to come, as we will go live at least 2 times a week. So make sure you stop by and help grow this channel, as we are so close to 3,000 subscribers now, and I'm not looking to slow down anytime soon. But once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in Valguero.